So I'm going to explain how Newton's second law of motion, F equals ma, and the process of psychological struggle and spiritual ascension correlate with personal growth, operating under the same principles of physical motion, as well as how intuition and flow is the same principle of the path of least resistance, which is what energy operates on. Now, F equals ma states that force is equal to mass times acceleration. Translating this into a spiritual and psychological framework and paradigm, you can think of force as representing the intensity of psychological struggle or spiritual pressure. This is the catalyst, the spark for transformation, the external or internal force pushing you towards change. So, life events like a divorce, a sudden unexpected move, or loss of a job, the betrayal of trust from someone close to you, uh, and then the trauma that results from this is supposed to act as a catalyst for your ascension and lead to a deeper questioning of yourself and gaining a deeper understanding. This is what leads you to knowing thyself. A divorce would cause you to question your identity of self if you've tied it to a relationship. A unexpected move or a loss of a job might cause you to cope with new stress factors and examine where it is you get your sense of safety from, if it's something external to you or something internal and inherent to you. And the betrayal of someone close to you would lead to you looking back and seeing what qualities you saw in that person that you didn't see in yourself that led you to trusting them, and also what red flags you saw that person have that you might not have seen in the moment. So, just as a greater force is needed to move a heavier object, the deeper your attachments and conditioning is mass. So, the stronger force, which is required to break through. Now, mass, the M, can represent the weight of your ego, your attachments, and certain subconscious conditionings. Now, this subconscious conditioning comes from certain self limiting beliefs that we hold that have started as coping mechanisms for some sort of trauma that we couldn't emotionally process at the time. These are built to protect your inner child, the psychological part of you that just wants to be loved. And you're always growing, so this inner child is always a part of you. So when you're a kid, you build up walls to keep you safe. But as you grow, the walls get closer and closer and eventually become stifling, stopping your growth as a person on a psychological and spiritual level. So you have to slowly dismantle them brick by brick, which is your conditioning. So the more mass you carry, so limiting beliefs, past wounds, and karmic baggage, which is subconscious programming, the more force is required to move you forward. Now, spiritual progress is often slow when the mass of our conditioning is high. So letting go of mass, like ego and attachments, makes movement easier. But it really depends on the person. And remember, it's a process. Now, acceleration represents the speed of spiritual evolution or the expansion of your consciousness. So the more force, which would be introspection, shadow work, prayer, or meditation, spiritual practices that you apply to your mass or egoic attachments and conditioning, the faster your spiritual growth. So if resistance is low, so less mass, even a small force can cause rapid acceleration in your growth. So if you're experiencing intense struggle, it might be because you're trying to move a large mass of conditioned identity. So you're trying to move that concept of you all at once, which requires a high amount of force. So it's like you're hitting a wall. So reducing mass, so letting go of attachments and expectations and egoic structures, allows you to accelerate with less resistance. So struggling is not a punishment. It's a function of transformation. So force applied to dense conditioning creates acceleration towards awakening. And it depends on who you are and how you deal with this stress as far as how much resistance you come up with. So to tie all this together in this last little bit of this section of the video, the path of ascension isn't about adding force endlessly, which will just lead to burnout. It's about reducing the mass that resists movement. So as you let go, you naturally accelerate without needing excessive struggle. This is why people like Alan Watts say, walk lightly, or just, it's like you're floating. It's because you're releasing that mental mass of you. So now I'm going to explain how intuition works. At a quantum level, particles don't just take from point A to B in a straight line. The particle takes every possible path. So when we track these paths using, let's go with conceptual stopwatches, each path has a direction or a phase, which we can represent with the arrows on the stopwatch. Now, when we add up these arrows and we square the result, we get the probability of this event occurring. Now, the larger the final arrow, the higher that probability. Now, the phase of each path is determined by action, which controls how fast the stopwatch turns. So a larger action means a larger phase shift. However, most paths that deviate significantly from the path of least action, or flow, interfere with each other destructively. This causes them to cancel each other out. So the only paths that persist are those closest to the path of least action, because they reinforce each other. This is how you can go and deviate from your path and you get guided back to it. So this principle mirrors how your intuition works, because it is how your intuition works. Your higher self exists across multiple dimensions, seeing all possible paths that you could take. So it communicates with you through your intuition and your subconscious, guiding you towards the path of least resistance. Now, those that align with your true flow. This is why when you're following your intuition, everything just syncs up, because you're moving through the universe in the easiest way possible. So the distinction between our linear experience of time and our higher dimensional non-linear experience of time is a matter of scale. So in quantum mechanics, like small physics, operates with all possibilities at once, while classical physics emerges with the probabilities smoothing out at larger scales, at least from our perspective. So in the same way, our everyday experience of time feels linear, but at higher levels, it goes back to nonlinearity. So all potential outcomes already exist, and intuition is simply a way of navigating them from a higher dimensional perspective. Now, if you found this video interesting, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe. And if you want to support me, I've got a link down to my Patreon and GoFundMe down below. I hope you did find it interesting. Uh, and be sure to let me know if you want me to continue with stuff like this. I mean, I'm going to. I don't know why I said that. I'm going to continue, but yeah.